So one challenge that I've come up against is in terms of promoting diversity in the classroom is working with other colleagues who sometimes feel like they need to be the expert in the room. And where I've designed a lesson plan, maybe a tutorial plan or a module within a unit of study that is about drawing out diverse opinions and perspectives on the material, staff can feel like they have to be the person to express those opinions rather than encouraging students to bring forward the different experiences that bring the learning to life. Particularly with tutors who are new to teaching, they may be overly influenced by that classic idea of the lecturer as the source of all knowledge, and they want to inhabit that kind of role. And it can be a challenge, but also really worthwhile for that teacher's development in the long term to talk to them, to work with them and train them in the value of inclusive teaching, where we reduce the amount of teacher talk time in the room, where we create environments where students feel comfortable sharing their own personal connections to the material. In terms of addressing these challenges, challenges like tutors feeling like they need to be the expert in the classroom, or students not seeing the value of each other's perspective in the classroom, I've found that research on validation in teaching contexts is really important and can help improve our teaching practices. And by validation, I mean the way we connect with each other's experiences and show that they're valuable and important. So for teachers, there is research that actually shows if we validate their own personal perspective on the material, it helps new and perhaps precarious teachers employed on casual contracts finding their feet in a big university system. It helps them experience a sense of belonging and helps them build confidence to be able to teach from their personal perspective rather than inhabiting some stereotypical view of what a lecturer or a teacher should be. So validation is important within a teaching team, showing that we all bring our own different perspective to the material. But that same strategy works really well with students. So validating student experiences by saying, that's an important approach that you bring to the material, or I hadn't thought of that perspective, and wow, my mind's opening up now that I can see things through your perspective, can be a powerful way in the classroom to show everyone that we learn more about the material by engaging with it from our own standpoint. So for me, students have a lot to gain in an inclusive teaching environment because they hear from a range of different perspectives. If I'm brutally honest, a lot of educators don't give themselves that experience, which is to engage with other educators and learn from a diverse range of opinions and experiences. To create that sense of belonging for students, for me, I do two things. I share stories and ask students to share their own stories about how they've arrived at university, how they connect to or relate to the material that we're teaching. And this allows students to hear from other students and understand that they're not the only one who might be feeling a little bit alone or different in the classroom, but we also hear different perspectives on what we're talking about in the classroom. So it builds a wider awareness of what we're actually learning about. And the second thing is that I match that diversity in the student cohort with the content and the research that we're engaging with, so that it's not only about students sharing personal stories, it's about seeing themselves reflected in the content and the research that we're engaged with. And I've found that second step is really important for building a sense of belonging and a sense of importance or validation for students about why we're sharing stories, why diversity is important at university, and why it's an opportunity for all of us to learn more by bringing out the stories that make us all a little bit different. I've found that some students will start to see the broader context of what we're talking about as they see many different perspectives on whatever happens to be the topic in a week's discussion. Really, it's about whether you learn one fine point from the material, or whether you understand why we're engaging with this material and how everyone can have a different opinion or sense of engagement with that material. And that's a really positive experience for students because as they start to see a diverse range of perspectives on material, they learn that it's not about rote learning facts and figures and skills. It's about finding ways to engage with one another through these interesting debates or topics that a lecturer has set or that are important parts of the curriculum. One of the great leaps forward that I was able to take as a teacher in inclusive teaching was moving from a kind of accidentally successful approach to teaching diverse cohorts to a more strategic and organised approach to inclusive teaching. And that step forward took place by engaging with the Universal Design for Learning community. And that framework, or the UDL framework, has allowed me to see what I was doing well and then to more strategically repeat it in other courses that I run. So in terms of advice and for other academics thinking of how to be more strategic, I think finding the framework that works for you, that has a community of educators around it who can advise you and help you, or you could ask questions of, is a really great way to progress from someone working in isolation, doing some great things in your teaching, to someone part of a kind of educational community who's connected with best practice and repeating the things that work well with more organisation. I had this moment only last semester, and to put that in context, I've been trying to strategically improve my teaching for diversity over more than 5 years of teaching. So it's nice to have a kind of light bulb moment more recently. I was teaching in a small group context, only 15 students in the room, and I had a fairly simple, or what I thought of as a simple question, which was about traditions and how we understand the concept of tradition. And I'd ask the students, like, is there a tradition that's important in your life? As a way to share our stories and understand how traditions are different in different contexts. And students were very quiet initially, I think hesitant to share. And so I said, quiet time is thinking time. Let's take a moment to sort of write down an answer first. And so I gave students the time to think quietly by themselves. And actually what I noticed is at least half of the class started using online translators. Because it was 80% of the students in the class came from non-English speaking backgrounds. And they were translating their thoughts back and forward between their home language contexts and English. And then when it came time to share and we went around the room, we had these beautiful stories of many different contexts sharing their understanding of traditions with quite personal stories about individual family traditions, maybe some cultural traditions or national traditions. And what happened is everyone in the room learnt so much more because I'd kind of accidentally enabled students to use devices that can help them to learn, to take the time to contemplate and think of answers and formulate ideas before speaking. And perhaps even in that structure, we'd stopped those overly vocal students from dominating the discussion as well. And so I reflected on that and worked it into a more structured type of activity, and also started adding comments in my teaching that the use of translation devices is allowed and encouraged even, because we want to hear from your own personal perspectives about the material we're studying. And over the semester, we ended up with a really vibrant classroom discussion where I could see domestic students in the classroom finding value in a Chinese student's experience of the content. And that's always been a challenge for me, as I know it's a challenge for a lot of educators. So I had this real light bulb moment that was wonderful about bringing out different and diverse experiences and perspectives and how it can benefit everyone in the room.